Hello everyone, we're just about to start reading the next bit of The Ice Monster, but before we start, two people want to say hello.
Hello.
I'm not going to tell you what take this is. It's a lot. It's a lot. We've done this many times, and this is the last time I am starting chapter 3, which is where we're up to. If you remember, at the end of the last session, the last bit we read, Elsie had just escaped from the orphanage and was about to start on a new life in London. Chapter 3, Pong. Elsie ran and ran as fast as she possibly could. She didn't dare look back. She was free but alone, and now she had to fend for herself on the streets of London, even though she'd never been outside the orphanage before. The big city was a scary place for a little girl. Danger lurked in every corner. Sure enough, though, Elsie taught herself how to steal food from the market stalls, and as for bed, she found an old tin bath to sleep in, and used old newspapers as sheets. In her mind, Elsie pretended that it was a grand four-poster bed fit for a queen. With no home or family, Elsie was what was known as an urchin. Victorian London was teeming with them. There's Elsie the urchin. Can you see? She looks lovely, doesn't she?
She doesn't look.
No, she doesn't. She has a jumper that was more holes than jumper. It should really just be called holes. She had a Pong. Elsie had never ever had a proper bath. Maggot baths only make you dirtier. She had never washed her hair and it looked like a mop. She had dirty hands, grubby face, and a too big coat that she had borrowed from a washing line. Filthy monkey feet, too small trousers thick with grime, and no shoes. Elsie didn't look much like a hero. However, you will soon discover that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. Expert thief. Read all about it. Ice monster found in Arctic. Living on the streets of London had its advantages. You slept under the stars. You ate all the fresh fruit and vegetables you could swipe. Best of all, you were the first to know about everything. News spread fast, and this was big news. Having never been to school, Elsie couldn't read or write. However, the newspaper sellers would holler the headlines to passers-by. Could this be true? A real-life monster? 10,000 years old, too? Elsie was old enough to know that monsters weren't real and young enough to still believe in them. The girl had just swiped an apple off a market stall for breakfast. Munching contentedly, she wove her way through the march of top-hatted gentlemen heading for work until she reached the newspaper stand. "Get lost, you little thief!" shouted the newspaper seller. He whacked the girl on the back of her head with a rolled-up copy of the Times. Thwack! You got whacked a lot by grown-ups, every day if you were an urchin. It was that you were the lowest of the low. At least it made a welcome change from being battered with a broomstick at Wormley Hall. "I only want to look," pleaded Elsie. "These papers are not for looking at. They are for buying. Now scram before I give you a kick where the sun don't shine." Not being a fan of a boot up the bottom, Elsie smiled at the man and ambled off down the street. She turned into an alleyway and then reached into the back of her grubby trousers and pulled out a copy of the Times. The girl had become an expert thief. There were big, bold, black letters on the front of the page. Elsie knew these spelt out words, but it all looked like jumble to her. The picture underneath did speak to her, though. It was of a peculiar creature that looked like an elephant. Once she'd poked her head through the flap of a circus tent to get a free show and seen an elephant performing tricks. However, this elephant was covered with thick hair, and its tusks were long and curved. It was encased in a huge block of ice, and a number of Arctic explorers were standing around it, looking proud. Despite the creature's bizarre appearance, Elsie found it hard to think of the poor thing as a monster. Monsters you were scared of. This animal you wanted to hug. It looked a great deal smaller than the elephant she'd seen at the circus. Perhaps it was a baby. Despite having been dead for thousands of years, it still looked lost and alone. An orphan, whispered Elsie, just like me. Chapter 5, The Universe of Wonder. As an urchin, Elsie was always on the outside looking in. Every day she would see a whole other London whirling around her, horse-drawn carriages speeding down the street, children in uniform marching off to school, lords and ladies stepping over her as they left the Royal Opera House. Elsie's brain was forever buzzing with questions. Where was everyone going at such a pace? What did those scrumptious-looking cakes in the bakery window actually taste like? And what was inside all those magnificent buildings? One day the girl decided to step out of her world and into the other. Elsie was standing in front of the most magnificent building of all, the Natural History Museum. When she tried to walk in, she was immediately thrown out by a hobnail-booted brute of a security guard, Mr. Clout. "I don't want no trouble from filthy beggars like you," he shouted as he hurled her down the steps. Elsie was not one to give up that easily, so she sneaked behind a gaggle of top-hatted gentlemen. At once, the girl marvelled at this universe of wonder. The museum was a treasure trove of life-size models of whales, stuffed animals, dinosaur bones, meteorites,
And they're funny.
precious stones, dusty old books full of beautiful pictures of animals from far-off lands, wood carvings of prehistoric men, floor-to-ceiling paintings of creatures that had long since become extinct. Soon she was sneaking into the museum every single day. Elsie couldn't read, but she earwigged on the guides and soon became something of an expert. So when she saw a picture of the ice monster on the front page of the newspaper, she knew instantly that it was in fact a woolly mammoth. Elsie had learned how these creatures had lived during the Ice Age, when saber-toothed tigers, giant bears, sloths and beavers stalked the earth, and birds like the Pterotornis, a bird bigger than a person, darkened the skies. Elsie was desperate to follow the story of the ice monster, so every morning she swiped another newspaper to search for news of the creature. Weeks passed, and then one day she spotted a jumble of letters she recognised on the front page of a newspaper. They looked exactly like the ones she'd seen on the side of her favourite building. Ice monster coming to the Natural History Museum. Elsie knew she had to meet it. So, we will see whether Elsie gets to meet it maybe in the next one. See you later.
I didn't get to see the ice monster.
Not yet. Are you going to say bye?
Bye. Bye-bye, Mr. Poopy Stinky Winky.
I'm sorry about that. Anyway, have a lovely, time until I see you next, and look forward to reading to you again.